The journey to the communication center took them through the heart of Nexus Prime. Taeho stayed close behind Dongwu as they moved through corridors that seemed designed for giants. Emergency lights painted everything in harsh red shadows. Every few minutes they encountered more guards. Each time Dongwu would motion for Taeho to wait while he moved ahead alone. The diplomat learned not to watch too closely. The sounds were bad enough. Brief struggles, the hum of energy weapons firing at empty air, then silence. How many more? Taeho asked after the fifth group of unconscious guards. We're halfway there, Dongwu replied. His breathing was still normal, as if he had been taking a casual walk instead of fighting through an army. The heaviest resistance will be at the communication center itself. As they climbed through maintenance shafts to avoid the main corridors, Taeho heard announcements echoing through the station. The council was calling in every ship in the sector. Fleets that had been scattered across the galaxy were being ordered to converge on Nexus Prime. They're preparing for total war, he said. Yes, they believe I am the advanced scout for an invasion force, aren't you? Dongwu paused in his climbing. No. I am here to protect one diplomat and prevent a war. But if they force my hand, I will become what they fear most. They reached the communication center's level and found it sealed behind blast doors thick enough to stop starship weapons. Warning signs in 12 languages declared it a restricted military zone. Guard positions had been reinforced with automated defense systems. 57 personnel behind those doors, Dongwu said, pressing his hand against the metal. His implants were scanning through the walls. Heavy weapons, energy barriers, and at least 3 war mechs. War mechs? 12-foot-tall fighting machines, usually used for planetary assault. Taeho swallowed hard. Can you get through them? Yes, but not without casualties on their side. For a moment they stood in silence outside the sealed doors. Inside, Taeho could hear the sounds of soldiers preparing for battle. They knew death was coming for them, but they were ready to face it. There has to be another way, Taeho said. There is. Dongwu touched a hidden panel on the wall. I have been connected to the station's computer network since we arrived. I can access the communication system from here. Then why did we fight through all those guards? Because the council needed to see what I'm capable of. Fear is a language they understand better than diplomacy. Dongwu's eyes went blank for a moment as his implants interfaced with the station's systems. When he looked normal again, he nodded toward a small screen that had appeared in the wall. You have access to every communication channel in council space. Choose carefully. This may be humanity's last chance to speak for itself. Taeho approached the screen and began typing. His message would go out to every council member, every ship captain, every species in the galactic community. This was bigger than just the 12 species on the council. This was about the future of an entire galaxy. Council members and citizens of all species, he began. My name is Kim Taeho, diplomatic representative of Earth. I speak to you from Nexus Prime, where humanity came seeking peace and found only violence. In the council chamber, the 12 rulers watched his transmission with growing unease. They had expected him to call for help, to beg for mercy, or to threaten revenge. Instead, his voice was calm and measured. You have seen what one human can do when protecting his people. Lee Dongwu is not a soldier or a warrior. He is what my species becomes when we have no other choice. But he is here to prevent war, not start one. On every ship in the sector, alien crews stopped their preparations to listen. Something in the human's voice demanded attention. Your council invited us here under the promise of fair negotiations. Instead, they offered us slavery or death. When we refused both, they murdered our cultural attaché, Park So-min. She came here believing that different species could learn to understand each other. Taeho's voice grew stronger. She was wrong about your council, but she was right about the possibility of peace. Even now, even after everything that has happened, I offer you that chance. High Counselor Vexithara's mandibles clicked angrily. Lies, the human is trying to— Silence, commanded High Counselor Zephkol. Let him finish. Humanity does not want to rule the galaxy, Taeho continued. We do not want to conquer or destroy. We want to join a community of civilized species working together for the good of all. But we will not accept slavery. We will not bow to bullies, and we will not allow the murder of our people to go unanswered. He paused, looking directly into the camera. You have seen one human today. Earth has millions more like him. But we also have artists, scientists, teachers, and dreamers. We have parents who love their children and children who wonder about the stars. We are not the monsters your council claims we are. Throughout the sector, Alien ships began to slow their approach to Nexus Prime. Crews talked among themselves in languages Taeho could not hear, but the tone was changing. "The choice is yours," he said. "You can listen to a council that rules through fear and violence, or you can choose to build something better. Humanity is willing to work with any species that approaches us with respect and honesty, but we will defend ourselves against any who seek to harm us." He reached over and touched a control that Dongwu had indicated. New images appeared on screens throughout the galaxy. They showed Earth, not as a military target but as a living world. Cities where billions of humans went about their daily lives. Schools where children learned about the universe. Hospitals where doctors saved lives. Parks where families played together. "This is what you would destroy," Taeho said quietly. "These are the people you would enslave. Look at them and ask yourself if this is the legacy you want for galactic civilization." In the council chamber, several members were no longer watching the screens. High Counselor Luresh, whose crystal body had been flashing angry red, now glowed with uncertain yellow patterns. "You have a choice to make," Taeho concluded. "You can choose war with a species that wants only to live in peace. Or you can choose to build a galaxy where all sentient beings are treated with dignity and respect. The decision is yours." The transmission ended. Across the sector, thousands of ships hung motionless in space as their crews considered what they had heard. On Nexus Prime, alarms suddenly stopped wailing. The red emergency lights shifted to normal white illumination. Through the communication center's blast doors, Taeho could hear confused voices as soldiers received new orders. "The Council is calling for a ceasefire," Dongwu reported, his implants monitoring all communications. "Fleet commanders are requesting clarification of orders." "What does that mean?" "It means they are afraid of what will happen if this continues." The blast doors in front of them slowly began to open. Taeho tensed, expecting weapons and angry soldiers. Instead, a small group of guards emerged with their weapons lowered. Their leader, a Vorthak whose crystal body showed nervous blue patterns, spoke carefully. "Human diplomatic representative Kim Taeho, the Council requests your immediate presence in the chamber. They wish to discuss new terms." "And Lee Dongwu?" The guard's crystal form flickered with what might have been fear. "He is also invited. The Council believes there are things to clarify about humanity's capabilities." As they walked back through the corridors of Nexus Prime, Taeho noticed that the unconscious guards were being helped to medical stations. None of them had been killed, despite being part of a system that had tried to murder him and his friends. "You could have killed them all," he said to Dongwu. "Yes, but So-Min would not have wanted that." "She was right about one thing," Taeho said as they approached the council chamber. "Different species can learn to understand each other. Sometimes they just need the right motivation. Fear is a powerful teacher. So is mercy." The chamber doors opened before them. Inside, 12 species that had ruled the galaxy for centuries waited to negotiate with the primitive humans they had tried to destroy. The balance of power in the universe had just shifted, and everyone in the room knew it. The real negotiations were about to begin. Station alarms screamed through every corridor of Nexus Prime. Red emergency lights bathed the walls in blood-colored shadows. In the command center, officers from a dozen different species tried to understand what was happening to their perfect fortress. "Security Team 7, report," commanded the station's Vorthak security chief, Kexmore. His crystal body flashed urgent orange patterns. Silence answered him. "Security Team 12, what is your status?" More silence. On the main display screen, a map of the station showed security teams as green dots. One by one, those dots were going dark. Something was moving through Nexus Prime like a plague, and it was heading toward the command center. "What is that thing?" whispered a Clixon officer, her mandibles clicking with fear. In the council chamber, the 12 rulers of galactic civilization watched their security footage with growing horror. The cameras caught only glimpses of Lee Dongwu as he moved through their station. He appeared in a corridor for a split second, then vanished like smoke. Guards would turn a corner and simply collapse. Weapons would fire at empty space while their owners fell unconscious behind them. "This is impossible," High Counselor Murdoch insisted, his forearms gesturing wildly at the screens. "No single being can move that fast." "He's not moving fast," observed High Counselor Zenkala, a being that looked like a walking tree. Her voice rustled like leaves in wind. "Watch the timestamps. He's appearing in multiple locations at the same time." The other council members leaned forward to look more closely. Zenkala was right. The security footage showed Dongwu in Section 4 at exactly the same moment he appeared in Section 9. That was impossible unless... There are more of them, breathed Vexithara. He's not alone, but they were wrong. There was only one Li Dongwu, one member of humanity's Ghost Protocol. What they were seeing was the result of technology and training that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Neural implants that sped up his thoughts until seconds felt like minutes. Biotechnology that enhanced his muscles and reflexes beyond natural limits. Psychological conditioning that removed fear, doubt, and hesitation from his mind. Most importantly, he had spent 3 days mapping every inch of Nexus Prime. While the council thought he was standing quietly behind Tejo, his enhanced senses had been recording the location of every security camera, every weapon system, every ventilation shaft and maintenance tunnel. His implants had hacked into the station's computer network and downloaded complete blueprints. The aliens had given him everything he needed to destroy them. In the corridor where So-Min's body lay, Tejo sat in shocked silence. The battle was over, but he could hear the sounds of fighting echoing through the station's halls. Explosions, weapons fire, screams in languages he didn't recognize. What have they done? He whispered to himself. A soft sound made him look up. Dongwu stood in the doorway, perfectly clean and calm. It was as if the last hour of violence had never happened. The immediate threat has been neutralized, Dongwu reported, but reinforcements are arriving from the docked ships. This situation will escalate quickly. Escalate? Tejo stared at him in disbelief. You just fought through an entire security force like it was nothing. What could be worse than this? War, Dongwu said simply. If I continue fighting, if I destroy this station and everyone on it, Earth will face the combined fleets of 12 species. Billions will die. Through the station's communication system, a voice boomed in the trade language that most species understood. It was High Counselor Zefkal, and his gaseous form was swirling with agitation. Attention, all personnel. The humans have revealed their true nature. They are not diplomats but assassins. All Council fleets are ordered to Earth immediately. Humanity will be sterilized before they can spread their violence further. Tejo felt his blood turn to ice. They're going to attack Earth. Not if I stop them here, Dongwu said. But for the first time since the fighting began, he looked uncertain. However, if I do that, I will have to kill everyone on this station, including the council members. That would make humanity look exactly like the monsters they claim we are. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. More guards were coming, but these moved differently. Their steps were coordinated, professional. These were not security guards, but actual soldiers. Elite forces from the council fleets, Dongwu observed. They will be better equipped and trained. More dangerous. Can you handle them? Dongwu was quiet for a moment. Yes, but each escalation makes peace less likely. The first of the new guards appeared at the end of the corridor. They wore armor that seemed to absorb light and carried weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. Their leader stepped forward and spoke in perfect English. Human-designated Li Dongwu. You are surrounded by Council elite guard units. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Counter-offer, Dongwu replied calmly. You leave this corridor and I won't be forced to add your deaths to today's total. The elite guard's laugh sounded like grinding metal. One primitive against 50 trained soldiers? Your confidence is impressive but misplaced. 53, Dongwu corrected. You missed the 3 in the ventilation system above us. Every guard looked up at the same moment. In that instant of distraction, Dongwu moved. What happened next was not a battle. It was an education. The elite guards had fought wars across the galaxy. They had conquered worlds and defeated armies. But they had never faced anything like Li Dongwu. He moved between them like a shadow made solid, like death wearing human shape. Their energy weapons, designed to cut through starship armor, could not track his movements. Their advanced targeting system showed empty space where he should have been. Their enhanced reflexes, improved through generations of breeding and technology, were simply too slow. In the council chamber, the 12 most powerful beings in the galaxy watched in stunned silence as their best soldiers fell like children. Some of the council members had begun to weep. Others sat frozen in shock. What have we done? Whispered High Counselor Lirash, whose species looked like walking crystals made of light. What have we awakened? On the screens, the battle was already over. 53 elite guards lay unconscious in the corridor. Not dead, Dongwu had been careful about that, but completely defeated. He stood once again beside Taeho, not even breathing hard. The next wave will be heavier assault troops, he said matter-of-factly. After that, they will start using ship-mounted weapons against the station itself. Can you stop all of them? Yes, but at some point I will run out of non-lethal options. Through the station's speakers, another announcement echoed. This time it was in the Klixin language, but Dongwu's implants translated automatically. All non-essential personnel evacuate to emergency ships. Prepare to activate station self-destruct. We will not let this abomination escape to threaten civilized space. Taeho understood enough to go pale. They're going to destroy the entire station. To stop one human, Dongwu added. They are more afraid than I expected. New sounds echoed through the corridors. Not footsteps this time, but the heavy mechanical noises of war machines being deployed. The council was bringing everything they had. I need to access the station's communication system, Taeho said suddenly. Maybe I can still stop this from becoming a war. Dongwu looked at him with something that might have been respect. After everything they have done, you still want to try diplomacy? So-min believed peace was possible, Taeho said, looking down at his friend's still form. I won't let her death be meaningless. The communication center is 12 levels up and heavily guarded. Can you get me there? Dongwu nodded. Yes, but once we move, there will be no going back. Are you sure? Taeho stood, gently placing So-min's hands across her chest. I'm sure. Then stay close to me, Dongwu said, and try not to look too carefully at what I have to do to keep you alive. They moved into the corridor, stepping over the unconscious forms of guards who had thought themselves the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Behind them, So-min lay in eternal peace, her sacrifice about to either save two civilizations or damn them both to war. In the depths of Nexus Prime, something that had once been human began to fight its way toward a chance at peace. The corridor leading away from the council chamber was wider than the ones they had used yesterday. Taeho noticed that it had no windows and only one way in or out. The walls were thick metal and the ceiling had weapons built into it. This was not a hallway. It was a killing ground. 20 alien guards surrounded them as they walked. More waited ahead and behind. Their weapons hummed with energy that made the air itself feel dangerous. The rock-like guard captain gestured with one of its 4 arms. Stop here, humans. They stood in the center of the corridor. The guards formed a circle around them, weapons pointed inward. Above them, the council members appeared on viewing screens that had dropped from the ceiling. They wanted to watch what happened next. High Counselor Vexithara's image buzzed with amusement. Before we dispose of you, perhaps you would like to send a final message to your people. Tell them that cooperation is always better than defiance. You're going to murder us, So-min said. It was not a question. Such an ugly word, replied Zefkol from his screen. We prefer to think of it as sending a message. Your deaths will help your species understand the wisdom of accepting our protection. Taeho felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. He had suspected this might happen, but hearing it confirmed was still a shock. They had never intended to negotiate. This whole meeting was a trap, to kill Earth's diplomatic team and terrorize humanity into submission. Our government will not submit because you murdered their diplomats, he said. Oh, but they will. Mordek's crystal form flashed on another screen. When they see what we are capable of, when they understand how easily we can reach them, they will beg for the same terms we offered you. The guard captain raised its weapon. The other guards did the same. Energy weapons whined as they charged to full power. Any last words, primitives? Taeho opened his mouth to speak, but Dongwu stepped forward. For the first time since they had met, the quiet bodyguard's face showed expression. He looked sad. Yes, Dongwu said quietly. You should have taken the peaceful option. The first shot came from above. Energy beams designed to kill instantly struck down from the ceiling weapons. But instead of hitting 3 helpless humans, they hit empty air. Dongwu had moved faster than eyes could follow, pulling both Taeho and So-min to the side. Almost faster. So-min cried out as one of the beams caught her shoulder, spinning her around and throwing her to the floor. Blood spread across the metal beneath her. So-min. Taeho dropped to his knees beside her, trying to stop the bleeding with his hands. The smell of burned flesh filled the air. I'm sorry, she whispered, looking up at him with eyes that were already growing dim. I wanted to see Earth make friends with the stars. You will, Taeho said desperately. You're going to be fine. We'll get you help. But even as he spoke, he could see the life leaving her eyes. The weapon had burned through her chest. There was too much damage to fix. So-min smiled once more, touched his face with a bloody hand, and was gone. Tae-ho knelt there holding his friend's body while alien guards pointed weapons at his head. Grief and rage filled him until he could barely breathe. Around him, the guards were shouting orders and checking their weapons. The ceiling guns were cycling through their targeting systems, trying to lock onto the third human. They could not find him. The temperature in the corridor began to drop. Breath misted in the air. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. In the sudden quiet, a voice spoke from the shadows between the guards. "You have made a mistake." The voice belonged to Lee Dongwoo, but it sounded different now. Colder. Like winter wind through a graveyard. The guards spun in circles trying to find him. Their weapons swept back and forth, but their targeting systems showed nothing. On the viewing screens, the council members leaned forward with interest. "Where is he?" the guard captain barked. "Behind you," said Dongwoo's voice. The captain turned, but there was nothing there. Then something touched the back of its rocky neck and the 8-foot-tall alien crumpled to the floor like a broken toy. Chaos erupted in the corridor. Guards fired their weapons in every direction. Energy beams scorched the walls and ceiling. But they hit nothing except each other and the metal around them. One by one, the guards began to fall. They dropped silently, with no sound except the soft thud of bodies hitting the floor. Those still standing fired wildly at shadows, but their shots found only air. On the screens, High Counselor Vexithara's mandibles clicked rapidly. "What is happening down there? How is one primitive defeating trained soldiers?" Her question was answered when emergency lights began flashing throughout the corridor. A security alert sounded. "Containment breach in Section 7, all units respond." Code Black protocols in effect. Code Black? Mordek's crystal form flashed with confused colors. "That is for war scenarios. How can 3 diplomats trigger Code Black?" "2 diplomats," corrected a new voice. The council members looked at their screens in shock. Standing in the corridor, surrounded by unconscious guards and smoking weapons, was Lee Dongwoo. But he looked different now. His simple black suit was unmarked by the battle. His hair was still perfectly neat. He showed no signs of the fight that had just happened. What had changed were his eyes. They were no longer the eyes of a quiet bodyguard. They were the eyes of something that lived in the spaces between stars, something that hunted in the dark between worlds. "One diplomat," Dongwoo continued, looking directly up at the cameras, "and me." He knelt beside Tae-ho, who was still holding So-min's body. "I am sorry I could not save her. I was trying to protect you both." "What are you?" Tae-ho whispered. "What your species needs me to be," Dongwoo replied. Then he stood and faced the cameras again. "My name is Lee Dongwoo. I'm a member of Earth's Ghost Protocol. You wanted to see what humanity is capable of when threatened. You are seeing one human. Imagine what happens when Earth learns you murdered our diplomat." On the screens, the 12 council members sat in stunned silence. Around them, alarms wailed as more security forces rushed toward the corridor. Emergency blast doors slammed shut, sealing the section. Weapons systems throughout the station powered up to maximum. "Impossible," breathed Zefkol. "One being cannot defeat our entire security force." "Your entire security force," Dongwoo said calmly, "was not prepared for war. They were prepared to murder diplomats. There is a difference." The first blast door exploded inward as more guards arrived. These were not regular security. They wore heavy armor and carried weapons designed for battlefield use. They moved like soldiers who had seen real combat. They lasted exactly 37 seconds. As smoke cleared from the destroyed doorway, Dongwoo stood unchanged among the wreckage. He had not even moved from beside Tae-ho and So-min's body. "You wanted to demonstrate your power," he said to the cameras. "Allow me to demonstrate mine." The lights went out. In the darkness, something moved through the station like death given form. Security cameras showed brief glimpses. A shadow in a corridor, guards falling with no sound, weapons firing at empty air. On the bridge of the station, panic spread like fire. Commanders shouted orders that no one could follow. Systems that had never failed began shutting down one by one. In the council chamber, 12 species that had ruled the galaxy for centuries finally understood what they had awakened. They had attacked a human diplomat, not knowing that death itself stood beside him. The second day of negotiations began badly and got worse. Taeho sat in the same chair as the day before, facing the 12 alien council members. Their platforms towered above the humans like judges looking down at criminals. The morning light from Nexus Prime's artificial sun made the chamber feel cold and unwelcoming. "We have discussed your species through the night," High Counselor Zefkol announced. The ethereal's gaseous form swirled in its container like smoke in a bottle. "The Council has reached a decision about humanity's place in galactic civilization." Taeho straightened in his chair. Beside him, Somin held her hand steady in her lap, though he could see the tension in her shoulders. Behind them, Dongwu stood like a statue, but his eyes tracked every movement in the chamber. "We are ready to hear your decision," Taeho said formally. High Counselor Vexithera of the Clixon stepped forward. The insect creature's claws clicked against the metal floor. "Humanity will accept the following terms. These terms are not negotiable." A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, showing a list written in multiple languages. Taeho read the English version with growing disbelief. "First," Vexithera buzzed, "all human ships will be restricted to your home solar system. Any human vessel found beyond these boundaries will be destroyed without warning. Second, all human military vessels and weapons will be surrendered to Council forces for disposal. Third, Council overseers will be stationed on all human colonies to ensure compliance with galactic law. Fourth, human population growth will be limited according to Council guidelines. Fifth, all human scientific research must be approved by Council supervisors." The list went on. Each item was worse than the last. By the end, humanity would be little more than pets in a cage, watched and controlled by alien masters. Taeho stood slowly. "These terms are not acceptable. They would make humanity slaves in our own system." The sound that came from the council members might have been laughter in 12 different languages. High Counselor Mordek's crystal form flashed with bright colors. "Slaves?" Mordek's voice rang like broken glass. "You misunderstand your position, human. You are a young species that has barely learned to leave your home world. We offer you the gift of guidance and protection." "Protection from what?" Somin asked. "From yourselves," said High Counselor Merdok, the silver-skinned being with 4 arms. "Your species is violent and unpredictable. Left alone, you will destroy yourselves or threaten others. We have seen it happen before." Taeho felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "Our species has learned from our mistakes. We come here seeking friendship and cooperation, not domination." "Friendship?" Vexthara's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Look at your companion there." She pointed one claw at Dongwu. "Even on a peaceful diplomatic mission, you bring warriors. This proves your violent nature." "Every delegation here has guards," Taeho pointed out. "I see armed beings on every platform." "Our guards are civilized," said another council member, a being that looked like a walking tree. "They maintain order. Your kind breeds killers." The insult hung in the air like a physical thing. Taeho felt so intense beside him. Behind them, Dongwu remained perfectly still, but something had changed in his posture. It was so slight that only someone who knew what to look for would notice it. "We need time to discuss these terms with our government," Taeho said carefully. "There is nothing to discuss." Zefkol's voice boomed through the chamber. "You will accept these terms now or face the consequences." "What consequences?" Somin asked. The chamber filled with new holographic displays. They showed massive alien fleets, weapons that could crack planets and forces beyond human imagination. The message was clear. Submit or die. Your primitive ships and weapons are toys compared to what the Council commands. Vexithara buzzed with obvious pleasure. "We could exterminate your entire species before your next harvest season." "We have done it before," added Mordek. 17 species have been removed from the galaxy for refusing to accept Council guidance. Their worlds are empty now, available for more civilized settlers. The casual way they spoke of genocide made Taeho's blood run cold. These were not civilized beings seeking to protect the galaxy. They were bullies who had grown drunk on their own power. "You're talking about mass murder," Somin said, her voice shaking with controlled anger. "We prefer to call it corrective action," Merdok replied with what might have been a smile. "Necessary pruning to keep the galactic garden healthy." For the first time, Dongwu shifted slightly. It was barely noticeable, just a small movement of his weight from one foot to the other. But every alien guard in the chamber suddenly became more alert. I see your warrior grows restless, Vexithara observed. Perhaps he would like to demonstrate human fighting skills for our entertainment. He is not here to fight, Teho said firmly. We came here for peace. Peace is what we offer, Zefkul said. Accept our terms and your species will have peace under council protection. Refuse and learn why lesser species fear us. The threat was clear. Teho looked up at the 12 beings who held his species' fate in their hands. They stared back with expressions that ranged from boredom to cruel amusement. To them, humanity was nothing more than an annoying problem to be solved. I cannot accept terms that would enslave my people, Teho said quietly. I will not. The chamber fell silent except for the humming of machines and the soft sounds of alien breathing. Then Vexithara began to laugh, a sound like breaking glass mixed with buzzing insects. Then you have failed the test of civilized species, she announced. Guards, escort these primitives to the holding cells. We will send their ship back to Earth with news of their fate. Perhaps their government will be more reasonable. Armed aliens moved from their positions around the chamber walls. They carried weapons that hummed with energy and wore armor that looked like it could stop anything humans might throw at them. Their movements were confident, almost lazy. 3 humans against dozens of alien soldiers seemed like no contest at all. Teho stood and faced the approaching guards. This is not how diplomacy should work. You invited us here under the promise of fair negotiations. We promised you nothing, Mordek said. We simply offered you a chance to accept the inevitable. The first guard reached them, a being that looked like a walking rock with too many arms. It gestured with its weapon toward the chamber exit. Move, humans. Your usefulness has ended. Teho looked back at Somin, who had also stood. Her face was pale but determined. Then he looked at Dongwu, who met his eyes for just a moment. In that brief glance, Teho saw something that made him shiver. Dongwu's dark eyes held depths that seemed to go on forever. For just an instant, the quiet bodyguard looked less like a man and more like something wearing a man's shape. Very well, Teho said to the guards. We will go with you. But as they began to move toward the chamber exit, surrounded by alien weapons and watched by 12 species that saw humanity as nothing more than an infestation to be controlled, Teho could not shake the feeling that the real negotiations were about to begin. Behind them, the council members settled back to watch the show. They expected to see 3 frightened humans led away like sheep to slaughter. They had no idea that death itself was walking calmly beside their prisoners, wearing the face of a quiet man named Li Dongwu. The corridor outside the chamber was filled with more guards. Weapons were charged and ready. Security systems hummed with power. It was a trap designed to hold anything the galaxy might throw at it. They had built it to contain the wrong things. Kim Teho stared out the small window of his transport ship as the massive space station came into view. Nexus Prime was bigger than any structure humans had ever built. It floated in the darkness of space like a small metal moon, covered in lights and docking ports. Ships from dozens of different worlds moved around it like insects around a bright flame. First time seeing something like this? Asked Park So-min from the seat beside him. She was looking at the same view, but her eyes showed excitement instead of worry. Yes, Teho said quietly. It makes Earth seem very small. Behind them, Li Dongwu sat in perfect silence. He had not spoken a single word during the entire 3-day journey. Teho had tried to make conversation with his assigned bodyguard several times, but the man only nodded or shook his head in response. Dongwu was tall and thin, with dark eyes that seemed to notice everything. He wore a simple black suit that hid whatever weapons he might carry. The transport ship shook slightly as it connected to one of the docking ports. A voice came over the speaker, speaking in a language that sounded like clicking insects. Then it repeated in perfect English. Human delegation, you are cleared to board Nexus Prime. Please follow the guidelights to Council Chamber 7. Teho took a deep breath. Everything he had trained for led to this moment. Earth had only made contact with alien life 2 years ago. The first meeting had not gone well. The aliens seemed to think humans were dangerous and primitive. They had demanded this second meeting to decide what to do about humanity. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. The 3 humans stepped into a corridor that curved away in both directions. The ceiling was much higher than needed for humans, and the walls glowed with a soft blue light. Strange symbols moved across display screens, showing information in dozens of different languages. Their guide was waiting for them. It looked like a walking crystal. about 7 feet tall with faceted surfaces that reflected the corridor lights. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes. "Welcome to Nexus Prime. I am Translator Vex Mora of the Vorthak. Please follow me. The council is waiting." They walked through corridors filled with beings that looked like they came from nightmares or dreams. A creature that seemed to be made of blue gas floated past them. Something with too many legs and eyes that glowed red skittered along the walls. A group of tall, thin beings with silver skin stood talking in voices that sounded like music. "Amazing," Somin whispered to Taiho. "Look at all of them. So many different kinds of life." Taiho nodded, but he noticed that every alien they passed stopped to stare at the humans. Some pointed. Others made sounds that might have been laughter. None of them seemed friendly. Behind them, Dongwu walked with perfect posture. His eyes moved constantly, taking in every detail of their surroundings. He noted the locations of security cameras, the positions of armed guards, and the layout of each corridor they passed through. To anyone watching, he looked like a bored bodyguard, but his mind was working like a computer, recording everything. The council chamber was enormous. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, and the walls were covered with screens showing star maps and alien writing. 12 raised platforms surrounded a small area in the center, where 3 simple chairs waited for the human delegation. On each platform sat a representative of a different alien species. Taiho recognized some of them from the files he had studied. The insect-like clicks and clicked and buzzed to each other. The gaseous ethereals floated in transparent containers. The Vorthak reflected light like living diamonds. "Humans," said a voice that boomed through the chamber. It came from High Counselor Zefkol, the ethereal representative. The gas creature's voice sounded like wind through caves. "You stand before the Galactic Council. We will decide your species' place in civilized space." Taiho walked to the center chair and bowed respectfully. "Honored council members, I am Kim Tae-ho, diplomatic representative of Earth. This is Park So-min, our cultural attaché, and Lee Dong-woo, assigned for our security. We come in peace, hoping to join the galactic community as friends and partners." Several of the council members made sounds that might have been laughter. High Counselor Vexthera of the Clixon stepped forward. The insect creature was 8 feet tall with sharp claws and eyes like black marbles. "Friends?" Vexthera's voice buzzed like an angry wasp. "Your species broadcast its violence across space. We have seen your wars, your weapons, your cruelty to your own kind. You call this civilization? We have had conflicts in our past," Taiho admitted. "But we have also learned from them. We seek peace now. We want to share knowledge and culture with other species." "Peace?" Another council member spoke. This was Mordek of the Vorthak, whose crystal body flashed red with anger. "Your ships carry weapons. Your soldiers train for war. Even now, one of your warriors stands behind you." All eyes turned to Dong-woo, who remained perfectly still. He did not react to being called a warrior, but Taiho noticed that several alien guards had moved closer to their positions. "Lee Dong-woo is here for our protection only," Taiho explained. "Surely you understand the need for security when traveling to unknown places." "Unknown?" Vexithara clicked with what sounded like amusement. "Human, you are the unknown here. You are the danger that has entered our peaceful space." So-min stepped forward slightly. "Counselors, perhaps if you learned more about human culture, you would see that we value art, music, literature, and learning. We have brought gifts to share with you." She gestured to a small container they had brought. Inside were examples of human creativity, paintings, books, recordings of music from around Earth. The council members looked at the gifts with what seemed like disgust. High Counselor Murdoch, a tall being with silver skin and 4 arms, spoke in a voice like breaking glass. "Primitive trinkets. This proves nothing. Any species can create pleasant decorations while planning war." The session continued for hours. No matter what Taiho said, no matter what evidence of human goodness So-min presented, the council seemed determined to see humanity as a threat. They spoke of containment protocols and management systems as if humans were wild animals that needed to be caged. Throughout it all, Dong-woo stood silent and still, but his enhanced hearing picked up conversations in alien languages that the council thought humans could not understand. His neural implants translated everything in real time. They were not here to negotiate. This was a trial where the verdict had already been decided. As the artificial day cycle dimmed the chamber lights, High Counselor Zefkol announced that the session would continue tomorrow. The humans were escorted to quarters that felt more like a prison cell than guest rooms. That went about as well as expected, So Min said once they were alone. They've already made up their minds, Taeho replied, sitting heavily on one of the simple beds. They see us as monsters. For the first time since the journey began, Dongwu spoke. His voice was quiet but clear. They should be more careful about their assumptions. Taeho looked at his bodyguard with surprise. Those were the first words Dongwu had spoken in 3 days. There was something in his tone that made Taeho wonder if there was more to his quiet protector than he had been told. Outside their quarters, alien guards stood watch. They thought they were keeping 3 humans prisoner. They had no idea that one of those humans was already planning their route through every corridor, mapping every security system, and calculating exactly how long it would take to reach any point on the station. The real negotiations were about to begin.